Oh my gosh, she's fiddling with my parts. Welcome to Cosmic Chats. We have a beautiful lady, LouSo, with us. Say hey.
Hey, everybody.
She is dialing in from Colorado Springs to be with us, is a comedian, is an influencer, I would say, on Instagram, and a mother of two beautiful girls. Tell us what's up, Lou.
Hey, I'm just over here dealing with the heat that I'm not used to in Colorado. It's like 99 here today. So I'm just gonna, get my sweat on, and that's it. It was my kid's first day of school. So woo! I'm a free woman.
First day of school, freedom.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to get chatting with you. We want to remind you to like and subscribe to the channel. And if you have a channel that you want us to support, why don't you subscribe, put a comment that you followed us and you'd love the support, and we will follow you back. So let's get to the first question. Lou, how would you describe the taste of a banana to someone who's never eaten one?
Whatever mushy tastes like is it's like baby food of any sort. It's like it's like eggs with a little bit more consistency and flavor.
Do you like
a hot egg? Yeah, I do actually. Yeah, they're very calming. You can always trust, like it's gonna be safe for your stomach. It's always like a safe go-to.
And if you were to be a fruit, what would you be?
I would be a peach, because they're super juicy and just full of life and color.
Fuzzy
and a little fuzzy, in the brain.
So let me ask you, when did you have your first existential life crisis as a child?
I grew up Mormon, so there was a lot of me, excuse me, like this doesn't really make sense. This doesn't really line up. So it, probably in elementary, probably when I was about 6, I always say, the Mormon Church lost me when they started putting Starbucks in Target, because I smelled that coffee and I was like, Mom, what does that smell? She's like, that's what the devil smells like. Get away from there.
Wait,
so I'm like,
they had that in the churches?
No, they put coffee in they put Starbucks in Target. You remember when they started doing that? So they started putting Starbucks in stores, because my parents would never go to a Starbucks, but it was there, and I had never smelled coffee before until they started putting them in the stores. And then I was like, what's coffee? And then I was like, oh no, like I'm already breaking all of these rules being a part of the Mormon Church. And that's when I was like, this is crazy. I don't believe what the rest of my family believes. And I'm, kind of protesting, even at like 6, all these things that I'm told are like the right way, and the best way to do things. So from a young age, I was questioning a lot of stuff, and that was hard, because I didn't necessarily fit in.
So how was Starbucks the devil?
Because Mormons do not drink coffee. They're not allowed to drink coffee, no tea, no alcohol. Like there's so many rules.
What?
Yeah.
Tea?
No tea. Yeah, none of it. It's actually like in the word of wisdom, it's considered hot drinks. You're not allowed to have hot drinks. I don't know. That was just the rule they decided. I don't know.
Okay, well, if you are Mormon watching, will you please put in the comments why? I do not understand this hot drink phenomenon. I was always told if you have a hot drink on a hot day, it will actually help cool your system down.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. And tea is so good for you. Like there's so many different types of tea that are good for you. And it's like at this point, if I don't have coffee, I get very, aggressive and grumpy. And so I feel like I am a much better person with coffee versus without coffee. So,
Did you have a grumpy leader at church that you think they could have done with some coffee?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, all of them basically just, they did not like my view on things. They didn't want to be questioned at all.
Oh, yes, the questioning. So, even in the good book, it talks about questions are good. Why do you think it is that questioning is restricted, not only in the church, but sometimes at some schools that stop asking questions?
Mm-hmm. I think part of it is just people being lazy, adults being lazy, because I find that with my kids, like they're always like, Mom, what's this? How does this work? What is this? And it's so much easier to just be like, I don't know, or today you can like Google it, it's like, just tell your kids to Google it, which makes it even worse. But I think, yeah, part of it is just not wanting to explain or elaborate because you don't feel like you have to. Like, it's like little kids, you're just like, you listen to what I say and just take it for what it is because you're a little kid and I'm an adult. So, I obviously know more than you. I'm right, you're wrong, and then I think another part of it is people probably don't know the answer. They're just like, I just follow this.
Yeah, the false pride.
Mm-hmm.
To admit that you don't know, because if there is a figure of authority that doesn't know, the training of the collective is to move away from that figure rather than acknowledge that we don't all know everything and there is space for other people to shine. So you talk about how your husband is Korean, correct?
Yeah, he's Korean. Mm-hmm.
And was he raised in the same area you were?
Yeah, so in Utah, I grew up just north of Salt Lake in Bountiful, and then my husband grew up in Layton, where the Air Force base is. So that's how his parents came to Utah. His dad was in the Air Force and they were stationed there. So he grew up in Layton, which is a lot more, or at the time it was a lot more eclectic because of the Air Force. It brought a ton of different people in, all sorts of people from all over the world. Whereas where I was from, it was mainly Mormons, very, conservative, like all white people, just like this, like very vanilla place that I live. So we definitely had different upbringings. He wasn't Mormon, and I was. So yeah, he definitely lived a different life than I did, even though it was like we lived like 20 minutes away from each other.
So did you run into any problems because you did marry someone who was Korean descent?
It was mainly the religious aspect that was the struggle, on at least my side of the family's thinking. If you don't marry in the Mormon Church, that's a big, like a big sacrifice, because Mormons believe that, if you do all these right things, if you obey all the rules and follow all the right steps and go to church every Sunday and go to the temple and get your covenants and do all these things, then you get to be with your family after you die. That's promised to you, that you get to be with your family forever. But if you don't follow those steps, then you don't get that. So that's a pretty big, heartbreak to think, well, I could have this, but I'm choosing not to have this. And so I think that was the biggest thing for like my parents, because they're like, we're trying so hard to, make it so our family can be together forever. And you're over here, messing it up and not getting married in the temple and marrying somebody who isn't of the same faith. But ultimately, my family, I think as my parents have gotten older, they've just chosen to have a relationship with their children, and that's more important than beliefs. So we're very close now. And my husband is like so wonderful. They couldn't be mad. They couldn't be mad about me marrying such like a great guy, just because he has different beliefs. So that was a big thing. And then on my husband's side, my mother-in-law and I did not, get off on the right foot from the get-go. So that was really hard. And she kind of viewed me as a distraction from all the goals that she had for him. And I ended up getting pregnant, before we got married. And so she was like, that's your fault, like that was all my fault. And, she's like, no, he's not going to finish school. He's not going to graduate. I'm like, oh, he's going to graduate. Like, that's more of a motivation to graduate and get a good degree, So I was like, I'm not hindering that at all. But she just kind of viewed me as a negative thing. And I think that that's pretty common in Korean culture. They are not thrilled with, him marrying a white woman. But, it's great now. Everything's worked out.
I also think that it's a deeper level, this mentality that a female in this particular situation, or it could be a romantic partnership, whether it's female or not, is hindering someone in a relationship and stopping someone from being able to move forward with their life because it's all consuming. And the reality is a healthful partnership does the opposite.
Right.
And I absolutely came up with that training that, oh, no, we don't want to find someone too young, or if you have children too young, it's going to cause these problems. And even in myself, when I was in a relationship in my 20s, and there's that idea that's when you're supposed to find someone, it's supposed to happen, that ultimately it wasn't the right connection. But the excuse on their part was, oh, I don't want anyone holding me back.
Right.
That's what my mom said. Yeah, you shouldn't have anyone holding you back. And I'd be like, actually, go away, please go away. Like, yeah, I'm not stopping you. And this idea of you have to be with someone 100% of the time, but either it's in here or it's not. Right? So there's that idea of marrying outside of culture, whether it's religion or whether it's from, I guess, race, different countries. But there is this idea that came down the line that it is a weight, an albatross around someone's neck. And this consciousness runs in comedy too, like all the jokes of the wife, right? Or the stupid husband, right? And that in itself does come from this consciousness of, married people are unhappy, blah, blah, blah.
Right, yes.
Where this comes from is not, I think, really having this enlightened state of a union, right? So nowadays it's more open if parents realize that it was great for a while, but it's not helping the children if they actually are in a relationship the same way, that if they are separated, or I know people who were raised with parents still in the same household, but not together, but to help for the child, that it breaks away especially in the 70s and the 80s, the divorce, the children always went to the mother, regardless of the mother's mental state, right? The male had no say in it. They were expected to pay this and that. And if there was so-called adultery, which most of it usually happens because it's an unhappy union, right? At that point, that consciousness of what a healthy relationship is, to be able to still give love, is where this albatross comes of union not being union. It's a negative aspect of being together, that everyone, and I think, do you think part of that is because there's this idea you have to be together forever?
Yeah, totally. Well, and what's funny is like because my opinion has changed so much, like growing up in the Mormon Church, it's like, you're going to be a wife and a mother, and it's all about family, and it's all about working towards the next life, right? It's not about what's happening here now and living in this life. It's about working towards that. But that's why, like, I even feel a lot of pressure telling people that I'm married, because I don't like the stigma that comes with it, because then people start to question, well, where's your husband? He lets you travel, you know, where are your kids? I'm like, you know, I left them in the car. What do you think? You know, like, it's like, it's like, you know, there's just so many expectations that I'm like, just because we're married doesn't mean that me and my husband have the same agreement or the same rules or the same expectations that every other person who is married does, you know, because my husband is like, so, you know, he is empowering and he's super supportive, and he lets me go do comedy. You know, he lets me travel all the time and be gone every single night doing shows and open mics, and, you know, people think that's so weird. They're like, you know, doesn't your husband worry? And he travels a lot, and I'm totally okay with it. I'm like, bye, you know, like, yeah, I don't have to cook while you're gone, you know? And it's like, that's okay. And I think it makes people like really scared or like uncomfortable or upset when they're like, your marriage is supposed to be exactly this way, you know? And so I think you're right that it's evolving to where it's not that bad anymore, but it's taken time.
Oh, it's going to take time. If we look at the female model of being in the workforce more, right, earning an income, and we can break that down. So if we look, as you're in entertainment, how many jobs there are for women versus men, we can look at most comedy clubs and their lineup and see more men than women. And so there is more competition with the women. Why? Because they still have to now pay the same bills, right, as the males do, and there's less opportunities. So, and we now want to bring more diversity in. And so if they're doing that with limited spots of women, then they're only going to be bringing certain, I'll just put in a lineup of 5. Maybe we'll have 2 women, maybe not, but we'll have 1. So that puts extra pressure on making sure that they fill their spot so they look good, rather than having this equanimity, right? So we have that coming down from the last century, right? That the man is supposed to, and again, this is this very stereotypical setup here. We're not talking about, you know, if we expanded through different sexual preferences, but this idea that one person has to have accrued maybe land, right, certain prestige and financial gain, and then they're ready to have the family. So then they would pick someone way younger, right? And so you then pick out the young pretty girls, which comes up with the idea of a woman is not allowed to age, can only be a certain way, unless they're of an older man and a younger woman, right? And that the women have to go after money. And what's happened in the last decade, I'm going to say, is with the calling out of Me Too, saying this is not cool anymore. It's not cool. But you see, the old MO was the women knew that was kind of the game. If they wanted to get ahead, right? That's what they had to do. And the men knew that that was kind of the game. And then suddenly it changed for equality. But their training wasn't that it had changed. And right now I'm talking only about consent at this moment. I'm not talking about anything that wasn't consent, right? So if we want to move forward to change this consciousness, right, we have to blast through everything. We have to blast through there not being equanimity of pay. We have to blast through there not being equanimity of all people being hired for all positions, right? And we have to allow all people to have the same education, right? And we will always battle in a country like America, where education isn't financially free and it's very much got out of hand. And those who want to can check into some of the other cosmic chats. We have one with James B. Partridge, who's an English chap who grew up with educators, as an educator himself. And we talk extensively about the challenge of education, and also with Marshall Kosoloff, who did the Realignment podcast. We talk about it there. So if you want to know more about that topic, we've talked about it there. But if we want to start breaking, we have to break it all down. Right? If we are truly dependent upon our source, if we have a religion, our God, then that is our source, and that's not a human power. But if we are absolutely dependent upon another person to bring that in, then we are relating our status and our value of who we are with that, right? And so there's this shame and this grief that comes on. I didn't achieve these things. What was wrong with me? And this programming that goes in from down the DNA, young childhood, is very deep. So if people want to rewire the idea of the patriarchy and just equanimity, let's just say equanimity, it's going to take, let's say you were very enlightened raising your two girls and they raise up, but they're going to be around a consciousness of other people, maybe, or maybe not grandparents. Then if they raise kids and it's in a very positive enlightenment, there's chances are that generation, but there's still other prejudices around. It's very hard to break these old molds. Right. And the way to do that is find a way to connect within. Right. How do we connect within to our own true voice and listen to that? And I know that with the comedy work that you have been doing, which is very different to others, and been working in a way that is telling your own truth and your own story. So we're shifting away from observational comedy, right, to telling your story. Can you share a little bit about that and how that became attractive to you and how you were drawn to go into comedy as a mom with two children?
Yeah, I mean, laughter is kind of always, it has always been my defense mechanism. Growing up, I would just crack jokes because I knew that I didn't fit in. So I'm like, if I don't fit in, I might as well just like make the most out of that and go like the extra mile. And that was just, that was my protection and my shield. And so laughter has always been that for me. I love to laugh. There's nothing better, you know? And so I always thought about doing comedy. But then, you know, I got pregnant at a young age and I had a lot of other things going on. I still had all those expectations that were kind of drilled into my brain from a young age. And it took me, you know, quite some years to get out of that and realize that I still can be my own person and I'm not, you know, too old to start something for myself. So yeah, I mean, when you very first start comedy, it's like you're just trying to say whatever you can to get a laugh. But the more you do it, that doesn't, it becomes not enough anymore, you know? And I guess that's just for me personally and other comics that I work with, you know, including you, Paula, like we've connected for a reason because we kind of see past just the superficial laughs and understand that real comedy that's going to take us, you know, so much further is being able to connect with people on a very personal level. And, you know, it's not only that, but it's not bettering my comedy, but it's bettering myself. And that's been the hardest part, is comedy has forced me to look inside myself more than anything else it has, because it tests everything. It tests your self-worth, you know, it tests your confidence, it tests your identity, everything. It's a very hard thing to do. So in order to survive, at least for someone like me who is sensitive and, you know, isn't the most like confident person naturally, it's really forced me to have to dig deep. And, you know, coming from the Mormon Church, it's like we're so focused on, like I said, kind of looking to the future and looking outside ourselves for everything. Whereas turns out everything we need is inside ourselves. And just that journey has been so amazing. So whatever happens, you know, with comedy, the most beautiful thing about it, I think, is just my own personal transformation and like really having to connect to my own personal source. And once you do that, it's like you want to share it with other people, and, you know, let people know that there is this unlimited source, that we are limitless beings that can literally be or have anything that we want. You know, we don't have to jump through all those hoops. We don't have to be a certain way. You know, we don't have to follow all these rules. There's not a right and a wrong. There's not a black and a white. It's very much you listening to your own truth, which my truth may be different from your truth. And so I think if we can portray that through comedy and free people from those chains of the black and white, you know, what better way to do it than through laughter, you know?
Absolutely. Connecting down deep. And for those of you who are wondering, what is this image behind me? This is an image of an ebook that right now, if you have Amazon Unlimited Kindle, is free. It's called Vedic Meditation Stories. It is the only publication available in the world at this moment that has genuine, truthful stories from individuals that learn a meditation practice, predominantly from underrepresented groups. We have people who learn, 6 years old, to those who came out of addiction through meditation, those who had maybe food disorders, or people who reached the end of their rope and didn't know why they were unhappy. This is an excellent resource. Any donations that through the payment go to the nonprofit. And also, if you have it free, your first opening will give us credit to the nonprofit. So we encourage everyone to check that out. It's a really small book to read, but it will give enlightenment about how people start to connect to their own source. How do people connect to their own truth? And those of you who don't know, the nonprofit is going into underrepresented areas in the wellness world, in the communities, to teach a meditation, which is a self-sufficient practice. Nothing that anyone's forced to learn a religion of any kind. No one has to follow the particular guru. The teacher themselves is an individual like myself who's in the world, and they have a technique that they can impart to you to be able to come and be centered yourself and hear that voice more clearly, right? Hear that connection through elements. And my experience with, I came back to comedy, and very quickly I was on a hike, and probably from all of the meditation, some things cognized and came clear that were very, very Paula, right? Very, very me. And that there is a movement and awakening in the entertainment world and in the comedy world, that meditation is absolutely helping people get to that creative source. Where is your voice? Rather than the observational comedy, how are we observing it? But what are my lenses, and why do I have my lenses? Which is exactly your experience from when you were younger and you realized that there was coffee in Target, and that wasn't necessarily a bad thing. Well, we want to thank Lou for joining us. We've had a delightful time. If you want to send Lou your love, please put it in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. It is growing. We really appreciate support. I know everyone says it all the time, but the subscribe, every time you hit subscribe, it does go to help the nonprofit have more followers to be able to monetize and help more people out there. And don't forget to tune in to the follow-up bonus that we have with Lou, and all her information will be in the description if you happen to want to get in touch with her and have her on a comedy gig. All right, for that, we'll say cheerio, and thanks so much, Lou, for joining us.
You're welcome. Bye.